Welcome to She Wears Boldly. I am your host, Dr. Deborah. Today, we're going to be diving into the stories of extraordinary women who are rewriting the rules, shattering expectations, and refusing to fade into the background. Empowered women say no to being defined by their challenges in a world that tries to silence and sideline them. She Wears Boldly celebrates the remarkable journeys of women who have transformed their struggles into stepping stones to success. So grab your coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready to be inspired and fired up.
Sexually abused by my father long before it was on the public radar. There weren't books, there was long before the internet. There was, and as a kid, when you're experiencing something that is painful, physically and emotionally, and you don't know anybody else is experiencing it, you feel like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so, I dropped breadcrumbs asking questions, hoping my mother would open a door and I could tell her what was going on, but she didn't. I figured out a way to go spend 3 weeks with an aunt and uncle and beg them to stay with them, me to stay with them. And I couldn't tell them why. And so they sent me home. And then I finally decided, okay, I'm going to tell my mother. And at this point, I was 15 and I had stopped it, but I wasn't confident that I had stopped it. I lived in fear that it would reoccur. And we were walking home from church, and there was a roundabout where 5 streets came together. A very, very quiet, beautiful sunny day. And I stopped her on that roundabout and I told her. And her response was, "Your father really didn't do anything. He just wanted." And I very graphically told her what he had been doing, and she couldn't get it. She couldn't wrap her head around it. She couldn't understand it. She couldn't accept the reality of it. And that was the day that I knew that I was going to have to get away, that there was nobody else who was going to rescue me, that there was no, I wasn't going to be able to escape. And so I was ahead in school and I figured out how to graduate even earlier and got myself on a college campus 2,500 miles from home 1 month after my 16th birthday. So that gave me physical safety, but I took the emotional crap with me. And a few years later, I received a life-altering epiphany. You are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life. And the combination of taking the responsibility to get myself out of the situation and then receiving that epiphany a few years later really totally changed the trajectory of my life.
Well, I'm sure there's other women that are right now really relating to that situation. So many of us have gone through physical, emotional, sexual abuse out there. And, so many are still stuck in it and need that pivotal moment that you're sharing right now. At your lowest point, was there any external or internal resource that gave you some hope that you were going to be able to carry on after all this?
Interesting question, because feeling like I really didn't have a family, because emotionally I had buried both of my parents at this point, and I was an only child. I did have a surface, if you will, relationship with them. But what I desperately wanted was to be a part of a family. And when I got married, that was my expectation. I was going to be a part of a family. And it didn't happen. During the 20 years that we were married, I lived in an emotional desert. And when, but I kept doing everything I could to make the marriage work because it was such a priority to me. And when my husband decided that he wanted a divorce, it was really devastating because my oldest daughter was making horrible life choices at this point. And so I really felt like I have failed at everything that was important to me. And spirituality is very important to me. And I was doing a lot of fasting and praying during this time. And the answer I kept getting was, it's all going to be okay. Now, coming from an abusive background, we tend to be control freaks. And I was a level A control freak. And so it was like, okay, God, I know it's going to be okay, but I want to know what okay looks like and when it's going to be okay. And that was the transition process when a few months later in the foyer of our church, a woman that I knew casually came up to me and said, "You're blossoming." And my first reaction was, I don't like that. I'm not blossoming. And one of the things that popped out of my mouth without even thinking about it was, no, I'm becoming me again. And that was such a pivotal time because I had sacrificed so much of me in an effort to make the marriage work that I had lost me. And so I was in the process of reclaiming me. And I think that's so significant for any of us who have gone through that kind of experience where we have been diminished, we have made sacrifices about who we are to try to make somebody else happy. You can never make somebody else happy. You can enhance their happiness, but you can't make them happy. That's their choice. So, a really pivotal time there, all about embracing it's all going to be okay and just relaxing and becoming me again.
Can you tell me a time when there was a specific obstacle that seemed like you just couldn't overcome it ever? Okay. How did you ultimately overcome that? And some skills you learned from that?
The obstacle would be that anybody ever knew that I had been sexually abused because I was so afraid that I would be judged,
Yeah.
that I already felt diminished. I already felt like there was something wrong with me. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't as good as other people. Why would I have experienced this? Nobody else was experiencing this. There was something wrong with me. So that was a huge terror. And I don't use that word lightly.
Yeah.
And on a Monday evening, the leader of my local church congregation called me and said, "Would you speak in church on Sunday?" And I said, "Sure." I'm thinking faith, hope, charity, no big deal. And then he says, and at this point, I'm a single mom with a kid that's making horrible life choices. I have my own business. And he says to me, "You have more uh, challenges in your life, more stress in your life than most people do. But you seem to deal with it better than most people do." Great facade out there.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want you to talk about how you deal with stress from a gospel perspective." In that moment, my heart sunk because I knew I was going to have to make reference to the abuse. Now, I went and found my two younger daughters, and they knew about the abuse, but obviously no details. And I said, Frank just called and asked me to speak in church on Sunday. And they rolled their eyes and said, so what else is new? Like teenagers do. And I said, I feel like I'm going to need to make reference to the abuse that I experienced growing up. And they looked at me, and to their credit, they said, we're good with that, Mom. Now, they're probably 13 and 15 at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to announce in front of a church congregation of 200 people they've known their entire lives that I was sexually abused when nobody is talking about it. And so that Sunday, I started out by saying, we all experience certain stresses in our life that are normal. The guy that flips you off on the freeway, the boss that's nagging you, the teenager that rolls their eyes at you. But we all have uncommon stresses, things like divorce, delinquent kids, having been sexually abused as a child, financial struggles, health struggles. Listed a half a dozen things, said, I have experienced all of these, and these are the strategies I use to deal with them. Afterwards, I had three women come up to me, and two of them individually laid their head on my shoulders, and amidst their tears, whispered, I thought I was the only one. The third one laid her head on my shoulders and just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I knew, and she knew that I knew. That was such a pivotal day for me because even though I had made a tiny, tiny, tiny statement, I had started to take down that facade. I had started to own my experience. And in doing that, I saw that it helped to validate other people. And that felt really good.
Yeah, you said strategies. Can you elaborate on the strategies?
You know, I can't honestly tell you what I said because it's probably been 30 years ago. But what it was is my strategies are always about something that I learned in college. And in my business management classes, undergraduate, Harvard had pioneered case analysis in their MBA program. There were hardly any universities that were applying that principle undergraduate. I was fortunate enough to be at one of those universities in those classes where those principles were applied. And it's very simple. So in case analysis, they would give you an example of something that was happening in a business where there was a problem. And they needed to solve this problem in the business. So the first thing you would do is identify what the problem was, then identify what the alternatives are, evaluate the alternatives, choose the best alternative, and in an academic circumstance, it would be prepared to defend your choice. In a life circumstance, it's implemented.
Yeah.
Do something
Yeah.
about it. And that's the strategy that I have used really with everything. So if I'm feeling stressed about, you know, the amount of money that's in my checking account, which was frequent at that time,
I bet.
okay, you know, what's the problem? It's the amount of money that's in my checking account and the bills that are sitting on my desk. Two, what are my alternatives? Okay. I was an independent rep at that time selling fabrics to apparel manufacturers. Maybe it's, do a better job of targeting two or three manufacturers that have the capacity to do more business with me and what I could do about that or looking for an additional client or
Yeah.
picking up an additional line, evaluating those alternatives, choosing one because I couldn't do all of them because scattershot never works because you're not focused enough to make it anything effective. You're bouncing from here to here to here to here, and then do something about it. And when you're actively doing something about a problem, it reduces the stress level. The solution may not have happened yet, but the fact that you're not just sitting there on the hamster wheel going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? That you're actually out there doing something makes a world of difference.
I really love that. And I think sometimes we wait till we think we have the perfect solution. But like you said, just start somewhere, right? And
You know, and
if it doesn't work, you throw something out there, it doesn't work, throw something else out there. I love that because too often as women, we wait till we have that idea that we think is going to solve everything and we overthink it and it goes out there and it doesn't work. And that can be discouraging. But yeah.
yeah, and think about you're going for a job interview and you want to have the perfect outfit for your job interview. And you walk into the interview and you see how other people are dressed, and you recognize that maybe you didn't make such a perfect choice. So you become insecure about how you look, which impacts the quality of the interview because you're focused on that rather than on what you would bring to the job and why they want to hire you. And so we think we have perfect answers, but we rarely do. It's a process. And when we don't lock ourselves in, we hear a lot these days about reading the room. And reading the room is about being able to be flexible in what we say and what we do based on what we perceive that the room needs, which may be different than what we expected the room to need from us when we walked in. And it doesn't matter if it's a family gathering or if you're talking on stage to 1,000 people. The principle is, are we willing to shift what we expected to what is needed?
Oh, that also is very powerful. I think as women, we actually have that inside of us to be able to be that versatile person. We have those instincts if we just allow ourselves to actually tone into them and say, okay, I'm walking in this. Particularly with family, right? You walk in the room, you can feel those nuances going on in the room. Something's going on, and you can make the decisions off that and not be rigid
Mhm.
in how you do that. I'm That's really, really good. Um, if you could talk to your younger self, if this was a possibility, what kind of wisdom would you share about embracing your own power and potential?
You are not responsible for anybody else's choices. They will tell you lies about who you are for their own reasons. They may not view them as lies, but the reality is they are because they're based on their perceptions and their needs. Learn to be comfortable with who you are. Learn to like yourself. Learn to respect yourself. Learn to enjoy spending time with yourself because that's how you will learn to like and respect yourself, which are key things that will allow you to be comfortable in any circumstance, any place, any time.
Um, Need to write that one down. Maybe you can put in the notes. Um, I know that you use your platform to uplift and inspire other women. Do you want to get into, tell us a little bit about your business and how you aid and help people to overcome?
Thank you. So, my signature program is Achieving Emotional Freedom Now. And what that does is it takes somebody from the pain of the past to the joy of creating their future. And we do that by looking at stories. If you're creating or you're doing a puzzle and you wind up with a few puzzle pieces missing, you still understand what the puzzle looks like. And so, as we look at what you experienced and your feelings about what you experienced then, your feelings about how you feel about it now looking back, your feelings about things that were said to you, not the things that were said to you per se, because they were lies, but your feelings about them. We're going to separate those from the people that bullied, abused, or enabled that by separating their story from your story. And we'll look at what was going on in their life at that time. And it's like that puzzle. You really know more than you think you know as we put together pieces. And once we do that, you can understand that they made choices that impacted you for their reasons. It was not about you, it was about them. When we make that separation and we can toss out the lies that you were told about who you are and who you could become, and you own who you are as you define yourself. And then we go through a process to quiet those nagging voices that are still there that are telling you you're not good enough and you're never going to be able to do anything. And we do that by confronting lies with truth. We will look for truths to counteract specific lies and then go through a process where you can counter those lies and quiet them down and make them disappear and replace them with positive related affirmations. And once you have done that, you have emotional freedom from the past. Then you can create the future that you want. So we look at the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life, which are personal, your relationship with yourself; physical, everything about your health and your body; emotional, which is largely about resiliency; spiritual, however you define spiritual; professional is whatever brings money into the household; financial is largely about stability and goals; and relationships of all kinds. Once you know what success looks like to you in each of these areas, not society, not mom and dad, not anybody else, but to you, we can weave that together to create your unique definition of success. You can then use that as a mindful filter to know when to say yes and when to say no, so that you can learn to say no when it's appropriate to other people, so you can say yes to yourself rather than saying yes to other people, which leaves you saying no to yourself. And then with all of this, we can create a roadmap to take you where you want to go and to create those dreams that you never thought were possible for you.
I know you told me not too long ago, you also, I mean, one thing about you that just really impresses me, that I know you have had challenges along, but you're still dealing with some new challenges, but it's not letting you stop. I mean, you're not getting stopped and you're going forward and enabling and helping other people.
You know,
Where are you getting the resilience for that?
remember that third pillar we talked about,
Yeah.
emotional, which is largely. So, I think, what Dr. Deborah made reference to is that a couple of years ago, I was in and out of the hospital 7 times. I was actually told at one point I had 2 days to live. Fortunately, the doctors were wrong. And one of the things, I mean, I don't have the ability to travel and be on stages like I once was, and I miss that. But I can be here on video with you. One of the things that keeps me dealing with the challenges that are the legacy of that is how much it means to me when I see somebody's life change. So when I see somebody's countenance go from pain and hurt to light and vibrant and joyful and excited about their future, that's what gives life meaning for me. It lights me up.
Yeah, that's great. Um, I think that's totally inspirational. And too often we think we're going along and everything's really good and we're enjoying life. And then bam, something happens to us physically, emotionally. Um, and part of us does want to give up sometimes. We just kind of want to go in our bed, pull the covers over our heads, and sleep. It's a
Yeah,
very woman response to stuff. Um,
yeah.
any advice on how to keep kickstarting that and getting yourself out of that bed and moving forward and even if it means changing what you're doing and the way you're doing it, because I know that had to be really hard for you to leave the stage. I love both virtual and stage, so I can resound with that. But you don't let anything stop you. You got something there and you just keep going at it and you keep being very versatile. Any
Thank you.
more words of wisdom to help other people that are listening right now is thinking, I just want to go home and go to bed,
So
I mean, yeah.
I'm going to give you an example in my own life where I very much felt that way. And this was back about 2008, 2009, when the economy tanked. And I had a very successful interior design business. Well, interior design is a discretionary product. And there were two parts to the business. I had a wholesale division, if you will, that we really only had one wholesale a client, but it was a huge client that we did work for. And then there was the retail side of the business. And so when the economy went, the retail side of the business, really dropped off quite radically. But it was okay. But then the wholesale client went bankrupt and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars and turned my entire life and business upside down. And I had a choice at that point. Did I want to go back to being, a one-man show and rebuild? Or did I want to do something different? Now, I'm 58 years old when this happens, okay? So I'm not a spring chicken. And actually, I was probably a little older than that because I'm 78 today. But anyway, the
At all. So yeah, nice.
I I absolutely I simply wanted to crawl in bed and pull the covers over my head and tell the world to go away. It wasn't fair. I had poured my life's savings, sweat, blood, tears, everything else in building this business that had some national recognition because within the niche of the design business that I was in, I had built the largest national business nationally that was built by a single woman.
Oh, wow.
Others that had been built that were larger by husbands and wives or built by parents, fathers, and daughters had inherited. But building it, so I had a lot of national recognition and accolades for what I had done. So I was losing my business, I was losing my reputation. And how am I going to start over? I just wanted to pull the covers over my head and tell the world to go away. And I did that for a few months. And then I decided this isn't working. You've had a lot of times in your life where you knew that you wanted to make a difference in the lives of other people. This is now your opportunity to do it. Your idea was always build a business that would give you the financial freedom, that would give you the time to do it, and that never worked. So this is the time to do it. And in the process of doing that, literally with what happened, with the business, my income dropped 80% in the course of a few months. That's some pretty significant lifestyle changes and impact. And that's when I decided to write the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life. I wasn't writing a book. I was writing about my life and what was important to me and what I wanted and what success looked like to me. Did it really look like having everybody tell me I was so terrific because I had built this business? Or was it about living true to myself and the characteristics and the priorities that I really valued? And that's what got me out of bed. And that's what got me on a different track. And that's what drives me to this day.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned your book. I didn't know about that. Yeah.
It's in the process of being rewritten. It's not even up on Amazon right now, but I can always send somebody a link to the manuscript. So
Put it back on. You're not going to be famous.
it's on my list. It's on my list. I got to do it.
Absolutely. That's powerful because it's hard to do that. But I love your resilience, but I really love your honesty that you did want to pull those covers over your head. And I've been there, and I think everybody listening has been there at some point, and we will probably be there again because, and that's okay. It's okay to give us, I really feel it's okay to give ourselves permission sometimes just to hide for a little bit, but then to kickstart ourselves back up and find new ways of reaching out and doing things.
Dr. Deborah, I want to share something with you that was shared with me by a friend years ago. And she was still is, one of the people with the poorest self-esteem that I know. And it breaks my heart because there's no reason for her to be so lacking in self-confidence and self-esteem.
Right.
And she said, I have regular pity parties. She said, when I know that I want to indulge in a pity party, I schedule it. So if today is Monday at noon, I may schedule that party for Thursday at 4 p.m. Now, I can't feel sorry for myself between now and Thursday because I've got a pity party scheduled. During that pity party, I can rant and rave and cry and throw things and pull the covers over my head and do whatever it is I want. But an hour later, when that pity party is scheduled to be over, I have to move on. Now, if I think I need, some more time with my pity party, I can schedule it for Tuesday at 9 a.m. And I love this concept because what it does is it validates our right to feel our emotions, but it doesn't allow us to live in our emotions.
Love it. That is so powerful because as women, we do have emotions. Well, men have emotions too, but we acknowledge ours and they try to hide theirs. And I love that you can just embrace your emotion at a time, but schedule it to where it's not going to impact. I think too often we try to keep going when we do need to have that scheduled time of being down or a scheduled time of doing something for ourselves, something special. Maybe it's a walk on the beach or some meditation or some exercise or whatever rejuvenates us. It's okay to burn out sometimes. It's okay to be frustrated sometimes and take some me time.
Mhm.
Even if it is, eating bonbons in bed under the covers, reading that book we wanted to read,
Yeah.
whatever it is for you. And I just love what you said there. I have one last question for you because sign. She wears boldly. And I picked that not because we have to be broad, you know, brassy and crazy, but because lionesses run the pack. Lionesses take care of the kids. Lionesses do the hunting. Lionesses share responsibility with other lionesses. I'm not really sure what the lion does except for be bold and strong there, but we have a lot of things. And that's why I picked She Rose Bowley, because we are all lionesses, and you are definitely a powerful one, and one that I know people can learn and grow from. So, what does roaring boldly mean to you personally?
It means not being afraid to be who I am wherever I am.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I want to thank you so much for being on here. And I encourage everybody to click down to the call notes because I'm going to have her put her information and her program and anything else she wants to put in there. And you can pick up on this, particularly if you're going through some really hard struggles. And particularly if you've been through grief with situational things like abuse and other problems, and be able to connect with her and get the help that you need, because that's what we're all about, supporting each other as women and standing together firm and helping each other. And I want to thank you so much for being on today.
It has been
um,
an absolute delight.
Yeah, it's been a delight. And thank you for being so honest and open and bold with telling us your story. Thank you. And have a wonderful day, everyone. And remember, check out those call notes.